Alright, Guild Wars 2 gamers, hello. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, and we've got some Guild Wars 2 news. This is possibly going to be a long video. There will be timestamps for each of the things that we are going to cover. The TLDR is there as a patch today. The Halloween event starts today. There's some new items added to the game today I'm going to go over. And also, Guild Wars 2 did an article with PC Gamer with talking about the changes they're going to make to the upcoming Elite specialization. So if you only care about some of these things, look for the timestamp for the things that you care about. All right, going through it in some kind of order. First off, October 7th release notes. That's today. This patch just came out. Note to users of third-party programs, all your add-ons might have broken. Maybe. Halloween. Once again, the gates of the Mad Realm have opened and Kryta's most infamous monarch, Mad King Thorn, has returned to hold court in Lion's Arch. Loyal vassals of the king are strongly encouraged to enjoy the festivities. Meet the denizens of the Mad Realm in events across Kryta, tour the Mad Realm itself in the Mad King's Labyrinth and Fearsome Clock Tower. Compete with your fellow mortals in Lunatic Inquisition, Reaper's Rumble, and the Mad King's Raceway. Attend to the king's whims in his notorious pastime of Mad King Says, or match wits and blades against royalty in Ascent to Madness. Switch scenes? Oh, apologize for that. There we go. The Lion's Arch Captain's Council, sorry, first day streaming. The Lion's Arch Captain's Council wishes to remind citizens that they are not affiliated with the Krytan monarchy and cannot guarantee the safety of any person who chooses to dabble in dangerous realms, mad or otherwise. All right, the annual Halloween Rituals meta achievement. Now I'm gonna pause there real quick. If any of you are completely new to Halloween in this game and you want a general guide with like an overview of this stuff, I have a guide to that. I'll link in the, I'll pin a comment down below with it, or it'll be in the description with a festival guide for this. The annual Halloween Rituals meta achievement has been updated with fashionable new reward, the Lunatic Jester's Trousers. Earn this comical new armor piece by completing a variety of Halloween activities and show your allegiance to the Mad King's court with pride. Last year's meta achievement reward, the Clawing Shadow Plate, can now be purchased from Halloween vendors. Lunatic Jester's Trousers. Okay, hold on a second here. Let me go here, go to wardrobe. I'll do heavy so it shows nothing else on me. Search Lunatic Jester. All right. That's them. With diamonds all over your booty. Okay. That's what they look like. All right. The new Unchained weapon set is now available, based on the classic Chained weapon set of Halloween's past. I love that set. You'll receive your choice of weapon by progressing the annual Halloween Rituals meta achievement or weekly Halloween festivities achievement. Okay, so clear that. Let's see, weapons and Unchained, and let's check out this new set. All right, Sword and hammer, and longbow, shortbow. Okay, so this is the same as the chained one, except the chains are like ghostly instead of normal. Axe, dagger, greatsword, mace, pistol, rifle, scepter, staff, focus, torch, warhorn, I don't know how that's a warhorn, shield, I like that shield. Any shield enjoyer will tell you that if they get the option, they want one the size of a door. Spear. There we go. That is the Unchained weapon set. The Candy Core weapon set is now available from the weekly Halloween vendors. All right, Candy, is it this one? All right, here we go. Scepter, staff. This existed in the game before now, so I'm gonna go through this pretty quick. Torch, warhorn, shield, rifle, pistol, mace, greatsword, dagger, axe, bow, longbow, hammer, sword. All right. Have you read the dev comments on the post-beta feedback on the new specs? We're getting there. No, we're getting there. Everyone's other favorite stuffed dragon friend, plush Zaya, is now available in backpack form from Halloween vendors. And there's more. Collect all 6 plush dragon backpacks from upcoming festivals to receive a special title. What? Plush Zaya? Who's Zaya? Okay, hang on. Armor, medium, plush Zaya. What? Okay. Oh, it's like, oh, it's Zaitan? Oh, it's like baby Zaitan. So goofy. Like, all right, so it's got like, it's like pear-shaped. It's got a few tentacles coming out of its bottom, 2 little arms, 2 wings, and a bunch of snakes coming out of its mouth. I was like, who is Zaya? Okay. All right. And let's see. Collect all 6 plush dragon backpacks from upcoming festivals. I might have to do that. The new mini candy corn golem is available from Halloween vendors. Mini candy corn golem. So let's see. Miniatures. Core. That's him. That's what he looks like. Okay. New Halloween-themed guild decorations have been added. Festive fall tent, ominous fortress ruins right and left, and ominous fortress buttress. But the Wizard's Vault has been updated with several special objectives for participating in Halloween activities. Wizard's Vault. And here you can see them. You can pause this if you want to read these. Okay. The chained weapon set has been updated to include the new chained spear. Ah, yes. When the chained weapon set came out, Janthier Wilds had not given everybody land spears yet. So that's been changed. Enemy health per player has been adjusted upward on non-champion door events in the Mad King's Labyrinth. Added a meta event to track the time remaining until Mad King Thorn graces Lion's Arch with his presence for Mad King Says. Many small issues have been fixed to ensure a fun festival for all visitors to the Mad Realm. The gates of the Mad Realm will be open for 4 weeks from October 7th to November 4th. Have a happy Halloween. General, fixed an issue that prevented Synergetic Cyberscale from displaying an animation for the Skyscale Mount's Fireball skill. Items. Wizard's Gobbler. The Gobbler Exchange's vendor panel now includes Gobbler items purchased from the gem store. Oh, baby. That is a good change. The Black Lion Gobbler's Collector achievement tracks which gem store gobblers you've unlocked in order to show their respective items in the Wizard's Gobbler. Oh, that is huge. So if you've got the Candy Corn Gobbler, the Snowflake Gobbler, the Zytaffy Gobbler, maybe any I'm forgetting, all of those now go in the Wizard's Gobbler. That is fantastic. That is a late game quality of life. New players, you're not going to have any of these. So this won't affect you at all until you're later on in the game. But this is basically, for people that have been playing the game for a long time, this is taking maybe 4 items in your bag and making it 1. So it's freeing up bag space. That's wonderful. Acquisition text has been updated for weapon skins obtained with Black Lion tickets. You know, I want to check something here. Hang on a sec. If I... let's see. Where's the Gobbler? There's a Gobbler. Show me my Gobblers. Candy Corn Gobbler. Right there. Where's my Snowflake one? I might need to go log onto my character that has the Zytaffy Gobbler and the Snowflake Gobbler to get this to recognize that I have it. But the Candy Corn one immediately showed up. Okay. Back to this. Acquisition text displayed when viewing locked minis in the hero panel has been updated for minis obtained with Black Lion miniature claim tickets. Added 3 new account-bound Halloween shoulder skins to the Black Lion statuette vendor for all weights. The box of Deathly shoulder skins, the box of Deathly avian shoulder skins, and the box of Deathly bull's shoulder skins. What? Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Permanent bank access, medium. I'll do it on heavy so all my other stuff is hidden. Deathly. Okay. Avian. Okay, so it's like bird skulls. Bull skulls. And Deathly is human skulls. Is it weird if non-human characters walk around wearing human skulls? Do you think they're bothered by that? Fixed an issue that prevented fishing rods from being displayed properly. Okay, so I don't really fish in this game, but I've heard people mention it. Thank you, Grim, for the Prime. Appreciate you. I believe the issue was if you had certain fishing rod skins from the gem store, they were not always displaying when you would fish in-game. And I believe that is the issue that they were tackling there. I've heard people talk about it, but I haven't seen it firsthand. Okay, so those are the patch notes from today. Now, there is a blog post called Shadow of the Mad King is now live. There is a little video here. Hang on just a second. the Jester pants. The Zaita backpack. Oh, it's dyeable. The Unchained weapons. One person with the paper bag on his head for the... Yeah, you can get paper bag hat skins if you want. When does it begin? It already started. Okay, so that is their little trailer. Pretty sure... Alright, this is the Guild Hall new decorations, I believe. The rest of this I showed in-game. And I don't think I need to read all this word for word, because this is basically the same thing. Yeah, this is basically just a blog post version of a plug for the event, which we just went over in the release notes. Once again, I'll have links for all of this in the description and a pinned comment if you want to skip to that. Next thing. Get your homestead ready for Halloween with a new decoration pack. So, if we go in-game and we go to the Black Lion Trading Store, there is one new thing on there called the Graveyard Homestead Pack. Now, if we go to the blog post, it's supposed to show us what it looks like if you want to buy it, and this is it. He comes out in the Mad King's outfit. Oh, I was going to get to this soon. I didn't realize it was in this video. This is a chair that is in the new Black Lion chest. If I go to here and go to preview, it is there. Witch Cauldron chair. So apparently you telekinetically... Wait, he just threw toilet paper in. Mushrooms. A bomb. The toilet paper, what? Okay, so that's a new chair you can get from the Black Lion chest. Specifically for Homestead enjoyers, it gives a Chargoyle, Fog, Fence, Gate, Column, Tombstone, Stone Paths, and Curved Paths. Oh, the Fog is actually a thing. That's interesting. And then the chair. Okay. So that is all of that. So, a couple things really quick on the festival I want to touch on. So, Guild Wars 2 Halloween event. There's one event in it that is more popular than any other, and that is the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth, if you'll stick with me, newcomers, for just a second, I'm just going to show you a very basic thing here. Wait, why is this not working? There, wow, I had to click that a bunch of times, getting some lag. Okay, so let's go to Lion's Arch. I'm going to show the Labyrinth for just a moment, just enough to try to make it really easy for new players to kind of know what's going on. So throughout the game, there are candy corn icons on the map. Those are often Halloween vendors. Let me crank up my graphics here to render more people. All right, and there's like a whole bunch of stuff here. These doors lead into the event. These doors are around the world right now. You can go to all of the different stuff here. We're going to go to the Labyrinth, and it will zone us into one of the labyrinths, okay? Now, the Labyrinth is what it sounds like. It looks like a labyrinth from above. And if I hit M, you can see that's it right there. It's not terribly complicated, but basically there's a path around the outside, and then there's a central area. What groups will often do with this is they'll get a big group, and if you're near the front of the group, your goal is not to kill things. Your goal is to just hit them one time. So, and you want to have auto loot for this. But you're running through and you're tapping things. And there's a whole group of people, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 people, and they're all going around in large circles and killing stuff. And the goal is that everyone gets to hit the mobs so that they all get credit for it. So that's why the people at the back of the line are making sure to finish everything off. The people at the front of the line are tapping everything. So your goal is, you might want to lower your damage. You put on different gear, take off gear, and just streak your way through here, whatever. And just tap as many things as you can. Weapons like the Thief Shortbow with its bouncing projectiles, things like that, are really good for this. Engineer just waving a flamethrower around, stuff like that. Now, there is one thing in here you should know about, which is the doors. If you interact with a door, it will spawn something. Maybe a group of mobs, maybe a boss. Very often, you will join groups for the Labyrinth, and they will either say no doors or yes doors. So if you do not want to troll your groups, pick one that you want. If you join a group that says no doors, don't touch the freaking doors. If you join a group that says doors, touch the freaking doors. That's it. That's all I am trying to impress upon you. So if you notice this, the patch has been live 27 minutes, and look how many labyrinths are currently open right now. People love this thing. And the reason is you get a lot of money per hour by doing this. Also, it's a lot of XP, and you can bring low-level characters in here. So you can power level low-level characters while doing this and be getting money, get your magic find up, stuff like that. What are you basically farming? You're farming trick-or-treat bags. You can either sell them unopened on the TP, or you can open them and it's gambling. Because you might get infusions, you might not. Okay, so that's the really dirty basics of how this works. That's the Labyrinth farm. The most popular activity. There is, of course, the many other things like the clock tower, jumping puzzle, and stuff like that people enjoy.
Guys, look at me. I'm so curvy.
That was a patron. Hello, curvy patron. And now we're off to the next thing. So, the last thing to go over, which is going to be a lengthy one, is Guild Wars 2's exclusive ArenaNet breaks down the changes coming to all 9 new elite specs in the new expansion, the next expansion. So this is a article on PCGamer.com. One of the devs at ArenaNet did an interview with them and gave them that sweet, sweet information that we crave. And essentially, we recently had a beta event where we got to try out the Ritualist, the Troubadour, and all the other new elite specs coming out. And in this article, they gave us some nuggets of information on what they are going to do to change these classes after they got the results of the beta. As an example, Amalgam was doing stupid damage. I would imagine that they're going to nerf that. Let's find out what they're doing. I have not read this yet. Okay. For the first time since switching to an annual expansion cycle, Guild Wars 2's next release will introduce a new set of elite specs for each of the game's 9 classes, or professions as they're called in-game. Elite specs are a pretty big deal, making fundamental changes to how a profession plays. New traits, utility skills, and an overhaul of the base profession mechanic means entire new builds for players to try. We definitely figured out that we wanted to do elite specs pretty early, says Cal Cohen, senior game designer for Guild Wars 2, in an interview with PC Gamer. Previous annual expansions have focused on adding new weapon options for each profession, which Cohen notes are a lot more specific in what they can do for a profession's kit. New elite specs, meanwhile, give ArenaNet a lot more options in what they can pursue. When we look at elite specs, we really try to shift the profession mechanic into something more radical, so that the gameplay is significantly changed, and usually elite specs can also fill a couple of different roles. So whenever we can do elite specs, I think we want to do elite specs. So really quick bit of background here. For the new bloods to the game, Heart of Thorns, the first expansion, Path of Fire, the second, End of Dragons, the third, all added elite specs. At that point in time, there was 27 elite specializations in the game, quite a few. They were trying to balance all of them, not doing the best job at it, but they were trying. And they were like, look, we can't add any more right now. So Secrets of the Obscure and Janther Wilds came out. Smaller expansions. They had different features, still affected build diversity. Soto added expanded weapon proficiencies and weapon master training, and Janther added land spears, both of which unlocked many new builds and new ways to play when you are in combat, no matter where you're playing in the game. World v World, PvP rating, open world, whatever. So this will be the first time since End of Dragons that they had added elite specs. Okay, the new set of elite specs, which are launching later this month, are all themed around the recently introduced Tyrian Alliance, an international group of characters from around the game's existing world, representing the countries that players have traveled to across the last decade. This makes it a more varied bunch than previous sets of elite specs, which were more closely themed around a specific expansion. Here we have elite specs that cover everything from Alona and Cantha to Lion's Arch, with more than a few that take direct inspiration from Guild Wars 1. Back in late August, a beta test gave players a chance to try out the new specs. Overall, the reception's really good, says Cohen. Obviously, none of the specs are perfect. We knew that going in, and we know that as players get their hands on them, we're going to get so much more feedback than we could ever generate internally. There's going to be things that we missed or things that don't necessarily land as well with the players that maybe people internally didn't have as strong feelings about. So I want to talk about this for a second because, although I used to work in tech support, and although my experience in tech support is going to vary, with other people's in tech support, I did spend time in QA, and sometimes when new players see a bug, or new gamers see a bug, or young gamers see a bug, they will be like, didn't they test this internally? And I always feel the need to kind of stress this following point. ArenaNet is a few hundred people. Their player base is tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It's a lot. It's a big number. So if you've got a bug or a glitch or something that only happens 1 in 1,000 times, they might not ever see it, even if they tested a bunch, because of just the numbers. And then we find it, and then one guy sees it, and he puts out a tweet, and it goes on blast. Everyone's like, oh my god, did they even do anything? Blah, 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 blah. That kind of thing happens every time. And as someone who used to work in QA, I have strong feelings about that. So I just want to try to paint a picture of how it actually is. Additionally, there is the thing about didn't have strong feelings about, There's also, Guild Wars 2 has an insanely flexible trait system, right? Like, you could come up with stuff like you change specialization, pick a certain trait, and combine that with a certain skill, with a specific rune and relic, and Lord Hyzen, and suddenly it's 150,000 damage per second, and we've got a freaking problem, okay? By the way, there's an undo button there. Does everybody know that? So they will not be able to predict every possibility of things that people can combine in the game. So when they do these tests, they often see combinations that they never came up with internally, and that's just how it is. All right, that's good. We want to make these specs even better. Seeing a lot of the pain points that players are hitting as they're playing these specs more and more is really valuable to us. I think maybe some of the crazy ideas we tried ended up going pretty well, and maybe some of them didn't land quite as well. Antiquary. And that's fine, excuse me. We have some time to go back and iterate on things that didn't necessarily work. Shortly after the test concluded, I got to chat to Cohen about the new specs. Running through each, I could keep a straight face. Running through each in turn to get a sense of not just the themes and ideas behind it, but also the feedback coming out of the beta that ArenaNet plans to address. The Ritualist is one of a handful of new elite specs that called back to the original Guild Wars, finally tying the spirit summoning profession to Guild Wars 2's Necro. As with most other Necromancer specs, the central mechanic is about building up life force to enter the Shroud, gaining temporary access to new skills for as long as you have enough life force to maintain it. It's the Shroud that grants the ability to summon the Ritualist's 3 spirits, which I think is a mistake: Anguish, Wanderlust, and Preservation. Each spirit has a different flavor. Anguish is about damage, Wanderlust is crowd control and conditions, and Preservation is healing and boons. Once placed, you can choose to rupture these spirits for additional effects. Its setup lends itself to power DPS builds or to support builds focused on quickness, boons, and healing. Okay, my feedback for this spec was it was very fun, very unique utilities and powers, and I loved them. I hated the rupture thing. It was like they just tried to shoehorn Mesmer Shatterns in here. Like, They even had a bit of lore where they're like, oh, the spirits you summon are not all chained up like they were in Guild Wars 1, because these spirits aren't enslaved, these are your friends, and they work with you. Then why am I exploding them? Like, lore-wise it doesn't make sense, and mechanically I don't like it, okay? So, I don't like shattering them. Like, because either you go into the Shroud, you summon them, and you hit the button to shatter them, and then they're gone immediately, or you leave Shroud, and then they auto-shatter when you leave the Shroud. And then they're gone again, unless you're taking a certain trait. And it's just like, ugh. Anyway, I loved Ritualist. This ain't Ritualist if they're keeping the shatter thing. All right. While that's my opinion. While there was a positive reception to Rit in the beta, the main point of feedback was once you summon your spirits, there was little else to actually do while in Shroud. The Shroud skills are maybe not quite impactful enough, agrees Cohen. The longer cooldown of spirits means that once summoned, there was little left beyond the auto attack. And for players taking the Grandmaster trait that keeps spirits active after you leave the Shroud, you can feel penalized for actually using your skills, because you need to instead preserve your life force to sustain them. For that build in particular, the best way to play it seems to just pop in a Shroud, press Anguish again, don't even necessarily press Wanderlust because the damage is maybe too low, and then exit out again, because then that's maximizing your life force, your spirit uptime. ArenaNet is now looking at how to make your Shroud matter more. In addition to making the summons more potent, possible options also include a rework of the Shroud's 5th skill, which currently shadow steps you and your spirits to a target location. This is very much a utility-focused skill that doesn't have as much of an impact as some of the other Shroud 5s we see, like the big CC with Harbinger or the giant Scythe with the Reaper, says Cohen, referencing the Necromancer's other Shroud-based elite specs. The team is also looking at making the attacks that trigger alongside a spirit summon more potent, making it more worthwhile to stay in Shroud and cast multiple skills. So, I don't have all the data they have. They're saying that that is the thing that they got the most feedback on. And I can't argue that, because I don't have that data. If it is, okay. That's certainly not what I personally wanted done. So, kind of wait and see. We will see. All right, Evoker. Evoker, what did I say about Evoker? Evoker, I tried playing Water Otter heal support, and it was impossible. Yeah. Hello. It was impossible to keep the boons up. You could either use Staff and really struggle to keep boons up, but you have access to stability, or use Warhorn, and it was possible to keep boons up, but it felt awful to play, but then you really didn't have access to stability or Aegis for your team. So that was the support version. The DPS version was, if you just went pure fire, was fine, but it honestly didn't seem that different from just pure fire Tempest, you know? It was just a different version of it. But let's see what they're doing. Where most LE builds are about jumping around the profession's 4 elemental attunements, making use of the separate weapon skills that each one offers, Evoker is more about picking your lane. Here you choose a specific element as your focus and get a matching familiar which follows you around, helping out in combat and providing benefits for prioritizing your elemental specialty in combat. ArenaNet's design goal for Evoker, then, is to create 4 viable builds, one for each of the familiars. Fire is your conditioned DPS build, summons a Fox familiar. Air is power DPS and summons a Hare. Water is healing, grants an Otter. And Earth is all about hanging out with a Toad, and also CC and protection. Hanging out with a Toad, marking it as more of a PvP option. Evoker's upcoming changes. Thematically, it's one of my favorite new specs, but in the beta, not all of the attunements landed as well as they could have, particularly on the support side. ArenaNet struggled with trying to do too many things in the Evoker trait line. The initial idea was that certain traits would be stronger with specific elements, but ultimately there wasn't enough room within the trait system to support this. We ran into the problem where we ran out of space in the trait line to actually flesh out all the builds, or where there's only one set of traits that each of these builds could take. It ended up not actually being interesting gameplay-wise, even if the theory was cool. Cohen expects that reworking the traits will open up space for more variety. We're probably expecting a lot more generic or a lot more of the dual-type traits where it's a trait that's good for fire and air. Those are going to be the main DPS elements, so we're going to blend those together for sure. That's going to open up a lot more space in the trait line to add a lot more support boons, because that's the big flaw in the beta of all the support builds for Evokers. They just didn't have access to enough boons to their allies. Yes! It makes me happy that they were recognizing that. Okay, if they heard my feedback. Another thing Cohen calls out is moving the boon generation of the Familiar's Blessing Grandmaster trait down to Master tier, meaning support players also have the option of picking the Grandmaster trait that locks you into your chosen element in exchange for significant cooldown reductions, while still having access to Alacrity. That could be cool. So, you guys, a lot of the people playing Evoker were trying out just pure fire. So, the idea here would be imagine pure water, which would be crazy healing numbers. Just number-wise, the healing output, the heal per second, would be among the highest in the game. If it can keep all the boons up. And that's the big thing. That is the really big thing, because right now your average support elementalist has to swap to fire and do fire combos to do might on the team. They have to swap to earth to give prot to the team, and they swap to air to do swiftness on the team, and water to keep regen on the team, and then fury and a couple of the others are in some like mixed areas. So if they can get the boons and go pure water, that could be really fun. I would be interested in trying that out, and I don't have a great track record with elementalists. So my feedback kind of ended here, but this is a very interesting idea. ArenaNet is also looking at allowing the familiar skill to auto-cast, which was another big point of feedback. It's definitely a priority, because if you're playing very quickly, it's frustrating to use my weapon skills, press F5, use my weapon skills, press F5. It's a really weird key binding. We want to make sure the basic skills, the one that you always want to fire off, are given the opportunity to enable auto attack. Nice! That's good too. Yeah, it's true. Like, I would say there might be moments where I would hesitate to use the empowered version of the familiar skill, but the baby version of it, you kind of wanted it to just fire constantly every single time it popped up. And yeah, it was similar to Berserking, where it's like, you're like 1 F1, 2 F1, 3 F1, 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 just constantly. Troubadour. Illusions are out, instruments are in. Oh, they're illusions of instruments, shut up. The Troubadour gives Mesmer a new bardic theme, playing instruments and reciting poems in order to deal damage and support allies, instead of generating and shattering clones. You build notes and use them to spawn spectral instruments, a lute that does power damage, a flute that does conditions, a drum that dazes and stuns, and a harp that heals allies. How long each instrument lasts will depend on how many notes you generated before it was summoned. Each instrument has a corresponding tail, a utility skill that grants extra effects if it is used while its paired instrument is playing. Recite the Tale of the Honorable Rogue, for instance. You cleanse movement and pairing conditions for yourself and allies. Do it while the drums are playing, though, and you'll also grant everyone super speed for a few seconds. Troubadour changes. Much like Ellie, there's a strong thematic through line in the Mesmer's new elite spec, one that feels particularly cohesive thanks to the obvious interactions between professions, skills, and utilities. If anything, though, players wanted that theme to be more present in gameplay, its spectral instruments making themselves more known. We just want to make sure that the gameplay around the instruments feels good, says Cohen, suggesting more tuning is planned. So I played the Troubadour support build, and it was really good. It was very good. I basically did support Troubadour with a rifle, and I supported some groups. It was solid. The barrier output was much higher than I expected. Whereas a Scourge constantly gives you small amounts of barrier, the Troubadour is just like every 10 or 20 seconds, it just gives you just a truckload of barrier, and then goes back to healing and boons, and then truckload of barrier again after a time. It was very, very solid. I will say, though, it felt to me exactly like playing every other Mesmer. You build up the pink dots and then you shatter them. You build up the pink dots, then you shatter them. It felt exactly like every other one. So I don't know if they're trying to change that or if they care about that, but that was my feedback. Similarly to Evoker, Troubadour's balance changes are going to be focused on the Spec's trait lines. In the beta, plenty of traits mapped directly to specific instruments. A lute that increases damage, a flute trait that applies on extra condition. Trying to do too many things in the trait line muddies what it can actually do in terms of real build, says Cohen. Our support build is maybe too linear or not interesting enough because our choices are very spread out. Right now, too much of the trait section is predefined by the build you're trying to take, resulting in obvious picks that feel necessary to take. That taking up a lot of space in this trait line could have otherwise been spent fleshing out different ways for the support build to do things, or really hammering into the iconic moments of the Troubadour. Okay, so this is very vague, so I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but they're messing with the traits, apparently, is the all we're going to get there for today. Okay. Galeshot. It's finally happened. The Ranger has an elite spec that focuses on the range part. Oh my god, it just makes me so mad if people say this. I get it. I get the joke. It's like saying that Guild Wars 2 doesn't have Guild Wars. I get the joke. But a Ranger is someone that protects a range of land. Like in real life, we have forest rangers and park rangers. They're not all specialists with compound bows. Some of them are, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, okay. I've had my rant. As we were looking at elite specs, building the elite specs, it was like, what is Ranger actually lacking? And it is actually lacking that true ranged elite spec, says Cohen. Galeshot is the answer. It gives Rangers a Cyclone bow. We already had 2 bows, and we already had a marksmanship elite spec. Which, when activated, replaces your equipped weapon with a new set of weapon skills. The skills cost arrows, which replenish over time, a bit like Thief Initiative, and by spending arrows, you build up towards Hawkeye, a special attack that fires off a hail of arrows toward multiple enemies. The utility skills are all wind-themed too. Damage, knockback, swiftness, launches. It's simple, a heavy DPS focus with quickness generation if you want a slightly less selfish build, but nails the execution of the core fantasy it's trying to unlock. Galeshot changes. Okay, honestly, although I am not happy with what Ranger got, I will say that when I tried it, it is solid at what it does. Before I even read this, I can't imagine they're changing much. I would say if I had any bit of feedback, I think too much of the damage came from the, what was it called? Mistral? It was like the wind wall. You would summon that wall and shoot through it and it buffed your projectiles. And I felt like too much of your damage came from that. So despite the fact that you're playing a build that should allow for the highest amount of mobility, it would tie you in place because you had to summon the wall and then shoot through the thing. And then also, you wanted to only use projectile weapons because of this wall thing. Which means, despite the fact that you now have a baked-in ranged weapon, this didn't free you up to take melee. You needed to bring triple range. You needed to bring the airbow and the longbow and throwing axes. All of them. Because you had to maximize on using that wall. Okay, let's see what they say. I think Galeshot was among the best received of the elite specs during the beta, and certainly the one I had the most fun with. ANET seems pleased with the reception. We didn't try to do anything too crazy with the spec. We had a great idea, strong theme, and the execution was just really done really well. It feels like Galeshot landed the closest to what its final form will be. Rather than any big feedback points, the focus is now on refining what's there. We have a handful of polish items, just small notes here and there. This skill needs a little bit more range, or some traits that could use it be a little more interesting. Okay, so it's not going to change a lot. Antiquary. What if the thief could summon the power of rats? That is the somewhat unusual theme of the Antiquary, an elite spec that gives you a little script buddy who helps enable your treasure hunting fantasies, stealing and deploying artifacts on the battlefield. I think our feedback thread on the forums was like about half of it was before the beta even started. I think it was more than any of the other specs. Why is this? In part, it's because Thief players are the most likely to be the edgelord PvP crowd cool stealth assassins who have no time for silly little rat pals. I'm a Thief main and I'm allowed to say this. It's because it doesn't make any damn sense. Thematically then, Antiquary had an extreme love it or hate it reaction from players, both memes and complaints generated in equal measure. It's also one of the more experimental specs, with an element of randomness built into its design. The usual steal mechanic is replaced by Scrit Swipe, which, that is not what it was called, which randomly awards 2 artifacts you can pick between from a pool of 8. The utility skills, too, can be activated while still on cooldown, but with a chance to backfire with a negative effect if you risk it. Antiquary's changes. The diverse range of opinions on its theme aside, a lot of the feedback from the beta, and this reflects on my own experience, is that the randomness leads to situations where you're forced to play the UI instead of the game. On stealing artifacts, you've got to take time to process what they are, what they do, and how to best use them. The lack of consistent results makes it hard to build up muscle memory as you play. We definitely want to make the trait that guarantees an offensive relic and a defensive relic baseline with the spec, says Cohen. In the beta, the split deck trait made it so that instead of picking from 2 relics from the entire pool of 8, one would always come from the pool of 4 offensive and the other from the pool of 4 defensive. In the full release, this will now be default behavior. Okay, that's good. We don't want those moments where you need a DPS skill and you drew 2 off defensive artifacts, or you need that big defensive moment and, oh, sorry, you got really unlucky and didn't get what you're looking for. So that's going to be that extra layer of mitigation just built into the spec. I think that's going to help a lot. Yeah, y'all know my opinions on Antiquary. I won't dwell on that. All right. Next up, Amalgam. All right. I'm guessing they're not going to change much on Amalgam mechanically. I think they're just going to nerf the damage. Because mechanically, I was fine with everything it did. But damage-wise, it was stupid. It was like 50, 60k, and I have no idea what I'm doing. It was absolutely busted. All right, perhaps the most comic book coded of the new elite specs, the Amalgams create a symbiotic bond with a metallic ooze, using it as a sort of defensive slime suit that can also turn into a comedically giant sword. Instead of the standard tool belt that gives skills based on your equipped utilities, you pick 3 out of a choice of 7 protocols, each offering various defensive and offensive effects, as well as additional bonuses when you enter an evolved state. Offensive Protocol Obliterate, for instance, gives you the aforementioned giant sword, cleaving and bleeding enemies, and if you evolve while the skill is slotted, you gain 10 stacks of the Might Boon, as well as 8 seconds of improved power and condition damage. Much like Galeshot, then, it feels focused, a strong DPS spec with defensive options that feel well suited to competitive modes. That doesn't mean that ArenaNet isn't trying some new things, though. For instance, Defensive Protocol Thorns introduces a version of the Old Retaliation boon named Thorns that damages enemies that hits you, this time with an internal cooldown, so, as Cohen puts it, it's not going to one-shot the whole Zerg in a 1v world. Amalgam's changes. As a DPS spec, Amalgam significantly overperformed, topping the DPS benchmark leaderboard by some margin. Unsurprisingly then, you can expect nerfs to its damage output, but otherwise ArenaNet seems happy with how the spec landed. It's useful data for us to see how far above or below our target these specs land, but it's not bad, says Cohen. Players are like, oh, the damage is too low on Ritualist, which is probably true, but that doesn't make the spec bad. We're more concerned if the gameplay of the spec doesn't feel great, which we talked about with Ritualist, where, okay, the Shroud needs to be more impactful. That was not the complaint. But the damage numbers at the end of the day will bring them up or will bring them down. At that sense, Amalgam seems like a success. Obviously, it's overtuned in terms of power level, but we saw a lot of really strong reception. It's one of the specs that got the most gameplay during the beta because the players are pretty excited. Really strong theme again, this mercurial mold, the shape-shifting metal. Really awesome idea. You can make a giant sword, and it's too big, and it clips through the ground, and we need to shrink it a bit. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on with the spec, and I think players really responded to it very strongly. Ah, they're nerfing your sword size. That said, ArenaNet is looking at the trait that lets you share evolved bonuses to other players. There's a few things that are maybe a bit too powerful to share. Quickness and alacrity. We tried a lot of exciting ideas here. We might need to kind of rein in some of those. It's possible, then, that Amalgam won't retain the ability to grant both quickness and alacrity boons at the same time. Called it. Something ArenaNet has historically been against. We're still thinking about it, but I'm not sure that one's ever going to make it to launch. It's got a chance, but it might not have the best chance. That would be fair. I mean, if the Amalgam was able to provide the whole group quickness and alacrity and no one else could, it would be the return of Chrono Jail, but it would be Ooze Jail. All right. Conduit. Oh, my throat is losing its voice. Conduit. As with other Revenant Elite specs, Conduit focuses on channeling a specific character with the game's lore. Okay, I think the main complaint with Conduit is it just felt weak. Like, it just felt lesser than all of its counterparts. I am not a Revenant main. I tried it and was not able to get good results. And so, that was just me. But I recognize that I'm not like a pro Rev player. But from what I saw from other people, that seemed to be what I was seeing. As with other Rev specs, Conduit focuses on channeling a specific character from the game's lore. This time it's Rizah, a Guild Wars 1 character recently revealed to have been hiding in his Guild Wars... Oh, wow, they're just going to put the spoiler right there. I'm not finishing that sentence out loud. Muck you, PC gamer. Yeah, I mean, I've been avoiding saying that in videos because there might be some people that want to find that out for themselves. The hook is that, as an entity formed from the mist, Rizah is something of a mimic, utilizing skills from multiple professions. For Conduit, this manifests as a new F2 skill called Cosmic Wisdom, which lets you invoke the power of a different profession, depending on which legend you're channeling. Flashback to when they said Mesmer would be demon because they're both purple. With the Demon Malix channeled, for instance, you gain Cosmic Wisdom Mesmer, which grants bonus condition damage and expertise and inflicts random conditions when you hit an enemy. The length of the invocation is based on your affinity with your chosen legend, which you build by using utility skills while they're channeled. The higher your affinity, the longer the Cosmic Wind lasts. Let's see. Conduit's upcoming changes. The idea, let's see. The idea behind Conduit feels strong, but players found it was lacking in execution. I think Conduit is a pretty good example of one where we felt that the profession mechanic didn't have quite enough going on. Muck giving Noxxi work. Noxxi doesn't edit these videos. It's just too mucking bad. I blame PC Gamer. Didn't have quite enough going on, says Cohen. We had the idea of the new F2 skill, Cosmic Wisdom, where you could channel the form of these different professions to draw inspiration and play into a lot of different builds. You have the Condi build with Demon Stance, or the Bruisery build with Jealous, and I think that what we found is that from a gameplay perspective, the skills end up just being not super interesting. The problem is that the bonuses you get from Cosmic Wisdom are generally quite basic, a stat boost and an on-hit effect. It's pretty on point with how the avatar skills from Guild Wars 1 work, which was the initial inspiration, but some of these also have some interesting hooks. So we're thinking, should these be more interesting? Fundamentally, they're like stances, so maybe we have a more interesting stance buff as you're in this Cosmic Wisdom state. ArenaNet is also taking a look at Affinity, which is currently quite basic in its execution. A counter that extends the duration of your Cosmic Wisdom. While making the wisdom effects more interesting would make Affinity more relevant, Cohen notes that it currently feels divorced from the overall gameplay of the spec at large. Interesting use of the word divorced there. We're definitely thinking a lot about that profession mechanic because that felt like the big feedback point of the spec is it just didn't do enough. All right. Oh my gosh, my voice. How many more is there? There's 2 more. Oh, Phil wrote this. Phil is actually knowledgeable about Guild Wars 2. I've mentioned that multiple times. You could tell from when he writes the stuff that he actually plays the game. Another Guild Wars 1 profession returning as an elite spec, Paragon gives Warrior a more support-focused kit with 3 new skills joining the traditional F1 burst. Chant of Action, Chant of Recuperation, and Chant of Freedom. Okay, Paragon. What was my feedback for Paragon? I think Chant of Freedom felt useless. As a support Paragon, it felt like kind of God mode. I was able to get into the extreme damage field in the testing room, which is higher damage than any real fight in the game, and just be like, la da 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 da, just take a bath, and use less than half my skills to stay alive. When I went into that same damage field with the same build on Water Evoker, I died in 2 seconds, because Water Evoker has like 10k health. And Paragon has like 25 and heavy armor and lots of defense traits. You take 15% less damage from that and 20 from this. And also the healing output was absurd. And it had like access to all the needed boons and stuff like that, which Evoker didn't have access to that either. It felt too good. Now I don't know if they're going to do anything about that, but I don't know that it was the funnest one for me as a support enjoyer. It was absolutely the strongest. Like, no contest. It was absolutely the strongest. Okay. These chants pulse boons to allies as long as the warrior keeps up motivation, a new resource that gains stacks when bursts are activated. After 5 seconds, you never had to think about motivation. It was always capped out. That means you're juggling both the warrior's traditional adrenaline meter and the new motivation counter to get the most effective support out of the spec. On the utility side, Paragons get a version of Shouts, barking beneficial effects at allies. The twist is that each utility has an echo, an extra effect that triggers after either a set duration or when the warrior uses a burst. The elite skill feels particularly spicy, given the player and their allies a few seconds of time where their health can't be reduced below 0. Paragon changes. While there was a sense coming out of the beta that Paragon felt undertuned, maybe the DPS version felt undertuned. The heal support version was insane. So I'm assuming they're talking about the damage build right now. One of the main pieces of feedback centered more on the look of the spec. Players want to see the wings more. Yeah. The wings come out of the Paragon for like 1 second when you do a very specific move. Yeah, it's true. A lot of people have mentioned that. Notes Cohen, referencing one of the more distinguishing features of the Guild Wars 1 version of the profession. We have those on the elite skill, the big moment of here's the Paragon wings in their full glory, and, you know, we're thinking about it. There are other places we could sneak those in because that is the iconic visual moment. In terms of balance, Paragon is another spec where ArenaNet is closely looking at trait lines. We see the Alacrity Grandmaster trait being an example of, here's a trait that just gives Alacrity. And that's, okay, real quick, pause. I can't remember what it was, but I remember there was another Grandmaster trait that looked really freaking good for support on Paragon, but you will never get to play it because the Alacrity one is right next to it. Just like Druid with Lingering Light. Lingering Light is really fun to play with, and it feels like the way Druid was meant to be played, but Alacrity trait is right next to it. So you never get to take a Lingering Light or people yell at you. So I'm curious if they're going to move this. We might end up moving it out to the Master tier, or we might end up adding more stuff on top of it to make it feel like a true Grandmaster trait. But there's a lot of examples, I think, in the Paragon trait line where it just didn't quite land as we wanted to. Another trait consideration ANET is making is enabling a DPS build. That is another thing that is maybe not as thematic, but is a pretty notable callback to Guild Wars 1. If we want to be the spear-chucking Paragon that does a bunch of damage, that's not super well enabled at the moment. It is kind of there, but maybe, again, a Grandmaster trait that gives you a bonus damage isn't the most interesting, so we're thinking, are there ways we can enable that build a little bit better? Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I would not have been surprised if they had said some support nerfs coming. So since they're not, it might still be an absolute healing powerhouse when it comes out. We'll find out. Guardian Luminary. Okay, what was my feedback for the Luminary? It was fine. I did feel like the Luminary Shroud, which is poorly named, doesn't do much. Hold on a sec. Teely, we've got a super quick question, chat. Teely is saying I can't join Worldview World. Teely, click on Worldview World here and make sure to go down to one of these. I think you need to join a team. The last tab in Worldview World. See if you need to join a team. That might be what's preventing you. I hope that helps. If not, ask chat again and someone will answer you. Okay. Luminary. So Luminary had the floating lamp behind it. The lamp didn't really seem to do anything. It was just kind of there. I either get rid of it or make it more involved with the class. Second thing was the shroud. It's not a shroud. It shouldn't be called a shroud. It's closer to Hollow Forge than it is shroud, so I feel like they should change the name, but that's a minor thing. The next thing is when you're in the shroud. Like, it doesn't do a lot. Like, you go into it, you use a skill of your choosing, you leave. 10, 15 seconds later, you do it again. As a support, I was just, going in, use the staff, and maybe hit something else, and then leave. And that's it. It felt way weaker than, like, Firebrand Tomes, for example. All right, let's see what they think about it. Luminary was designed to be more in line with the core Guardian fantasy, in contrast to the more adjacent roles of its other elite specs. The beta version kept the core Guardian virtue skills, and instead added a new mechanic, Radiant Shroud, which replaces your weapon skills while active. While in Radiant Shroud, you can access skills that correspond to 4 Radiant weapons. Using a skill performs an action, but also equips the weapon, granting bonuses and a follow-up attack. Equipping the Radiant Hammer, for instance, and you'll initially damage and daze up to 5 enemies. You can then use the Hammer's Shining Spin attack, which does increased damage to dazed enemies. Unlike a Necro Shroud, there's no resource meter to manage. Yeah, it doesn't protect your hit points either. To access your Shroud. Instead, the cooldown for re-entering Shroud increases based on the number of Radiant weapons you use. Use 1 Radiant weapon, and the cooldown is just 5 seconds, increasing an additional 5 seconds for each Radiant weapon used. Yeah, dude, I cannot stress this enough. I wish they would just name it something else. It's kind of like Druid Astral Form. It's like if they called it Astral Shroud. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, honestly, Astral Form is closer to Shroud because it has a power meter you have to fill up. Like, you don't have to fill a power bar to enter this. It doesn't, like, protect your hit points. It's, like, not a Shroud. It's a weapon. It's a timed weapon swap. So, I would really like them to change that because I feel like it's misleading. But moving on. Luminary upcoming changes. There's big changes planned for Luminary's launch, which surprisingly Cohen takes as a positive. Instead of lots of small things to tweak and fix, there were a few major changes requested. Which kind of feels really good because, okay, if we just fix all those things, then the spec's awesome. One relatively small immediate change is that Radiant Shroud won't be called a Shroud. Oh, thank freaking God. Yes! All right. Internally, we use the word Shroud to talk about a lot of mechanics that are maybe not Shrouds. Harbinger has a fairly loose interpretation of Shroud in that it doesn't even protect you. But I think we're going to rename the Radiant Shroud. Maybe Radiant Forge. What did I just say? I swear I didn't read this. We'll brainstorm it a little bit internally. As for the major feedback, ArenaNet is addressing the flow of combat in Shroud. We see a lot of feedback around some of these skills being a bit too slow. You know, the hammer you float above the air for, 10 years and then you slam down? Maybe it should be sped up a bit. More generally, players were frustrated with the Shroud's cooldown scaling, seeing it as a penalty for wanting to use all the skills while in Shroud. I don't want to say it's surprising, but it's the opposite of how we envisioned it. It was more of like a reward for just popping in and doing one thing. It's like, okay, if I need my shield block, I could just go in Shroud, use my shield block, and then come out, and then I have less time until I can go into it again if I need to get my sword leap or my hammer slam. Nevertheless, that's not how players saw it, so it's being changed. ArenaNet now looking at ways to remove the penalty for using the full potency of the Shroud's kit. ArenaNet is also looking at the Shroud's auto attack, which changes based on the weapon, radiant weapon you equip. A neat idea, but one that felt underwhelming in the moment. It's just the same kind of spell-casty burst of magic around you all the time. And we saw a lot of players say, I have a giant hammer in my hands, why am I not swinging this hammer? So we're probably going to retool how the basic attack works a little and try to give a little more incentive to be in that Shroud a little longer. The other big, because right now we're given encouragement to leave the Shroud as soon as possible. The other big change will focus on virtues. The Guardian's F1 to F3, which for Luminary are the same as those used by the core profession. That's another thing players called out, like, why are they the core virtues? Which again, understandable. New players might be like, why is that surprising? And it is surprising because for every other Guardian Elite spec, those changed. The Dragon Hunter has its own virtues, the Willbender has its own virtues, and the Firebrand has the tomes which replace the virtues. So the Luminary was the only one that didn't get new virtues. So that's why the confusion. And so now ArenaNet is looking at making Luminary-specific virtues that better tie into the specific themes of the spec. We do want to keep them as more of those instant cast, immediate value type of skills. We just want to give them a little bit more Luminary flavor, maybe some interaction with the profession mechanics. But the idea is that these are supposed to be more immediate value as opposed to the big animations of Dragon Hunter or Willbender, because we have those big animations in the Radiant Shroud. By Phil Savage. And that's the end of the article. Woo! Okay, so that is all of it. Very interesting. I know Lord Hyzen, who's one of the most busted players I know, he couldn't get any damage out of Luminary. He could not get good damage out of it. I played it as a healer, and it was adequate. I was able to get the job done, but it was certainly nowhere near the strength of, like, Paragon or many of the ones that already exist in the game. But that's it. That is all we've got for now. That is all we've got for now. So, a couple of other minor things like that they didn't talk about. Do you guys remember the musical note user interface for the Troubadour? I find myself thinking about that again. I hope they tweak that. There was a lot of people that I spoke with in my chat that were confused by that. They were like, why is it showing 5 notes? Or 6 notes or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, it's supposed to represent 3. But it was like, just visually, it was kind of confusing. Unless you were already, like, adept at music in real life, which a lot of us are not. A lot of us are just stupid. So there was a lot of folks that were confused by the Troubadour UI until they had played it for a while. I think it would be good if they redid that UI thing, and just had, like, 3 individual notes. But that's just my opinion. What do y'all think? So, as always, if you've got any questions, problems, thoughts, concerns, put them in the comment section down below. I'll have links to all of this down there for you to poke at if you want to, and I will fight you there.